Our biggest regrets in the long run are not our failures. We need other people's input in order to get better.
As it relates to realizing our potential and unlocking our hidden potential, which is, if I was able to achieve anything with this podcast over the time that we've ran it, allowing people to realize and pursue their potential, I think would be one of the greatest achievements that we as a team could have achieved by doing this podcast. Yeah. It's something that I think people's, much of their happiness, much of their fulfillment, much of their health probably lies in the pursuit of their potential, whatever that means. And all of the opposite stuff, much of their dissatisfaction, their unhappiness probably lies in their regret and their understanding that they can and could have done more in their lives. I mean, you think about Bronnie Ware all the time, that study she did on those palliative patients where so many of them wish they'd lived the life true to themselves. So many of them wish that they'd taken that jump and pursued that thing that was maybe a little bit more risky. So what is the closing argument here for those people that are trying to unlock their hidden potential?
Well, I think if you look at regret, psychologists find that our biggest regrets in the long run are not our failures. They're our failures to try. And it's the actions not taken that we wish we could redo the most. I think finding the motivation and the courage to take those risks is not always easy for people. And I think one thing that I found helpful over time that has some good evidence behind it is a lot of us know we need other people's input in order to get better. So what we do is we ask for feedback. And the problem with asking for feedback is you end up with a bunch of cheerleaders and critics. The cheerleaders you don't fully trust because they see you through rose-colored glasses and they just applaud your best self. The critics are devastating. They attack your worst self. We want our coaches, people who see your hidden potential and help you become a better version of yourself. And Steve, you've seen this forever. World-class athletes and musicians and actors have coaches. We all need coaches in our lives. And they don't have to be somebody we hire. You don't have to have a budget. They're people that you rely on who are part of that challenge network, who enable you to keep growing. So how do you get your cheerleaders and critics to be better coaches? What you do is instead of asking them for feedback, you seek their advice. When you ask for feedback, people look at the past. If you ask for advice, they turn to the future and they become more specific and more actionable in giving you tips and suggestions. So if you go back, I'll give you the personal example on this one. Go back to the military leaders that I taught who told me that they gained nothing from my session, but they hope I learned something. I've got a bunch of critics in that situation. And they're demoralizing me. I want to give up. I'm like, wonder if I could actually build the ability to hibernate. And then in a few months, I'll feel better. But I had committed to teach a second session for these military leaders. And it was about a week later. I didn't have time to reboot all my content. And so I went to my critics and tried to turn them into coaches. And I asked them for advice on what to do differently in the next session. And one of them said, a big mistake I made was I led with my credentials. And I tried to convince them that I was an expert. Well, I was 25 years old. These are seasoned military leaders. They've got multi-billion-pound budgets. They've got thousands of flying hours under their belts. They've got Top Gun-style nicknames. I'm not going to convince them that I am more experienced than they are. And this one person said, you should try calling out the elephant in the room. Be a little more vulnerable. So I walk in the next week. I look out at the room, and I say, all right, I know what you're all thinking right now. What could I possibly learn from a professor who's 12 years old? Silence. And then one guy, call sign Sandoon, jumps in and he says, that's ridiculous. You got to be at least 13. They all burst out laughing. It broke the ice. I more or less taught the same material, but the feedback was much more positive afterward. They told me that although I was junior in experience, I dealt with the evidence in an interesting way, and they liked learning from somebody who was almost as young as the millennials they were trying to lead. And I learned from that experience that the very people it felt like they were trying to take me down, if I asked for their advice instead of their feedback, they actually gave me a tip that built me up.